Wir sehen eine zunehmende Eskalation und Blockbildung zwischen dem NATO-Westen einerseits, Russland, China und den BRICS andererseits. Der Ton gegenüber Russland wird immer rauer. Wohin bewegt sich die geopolitische Entwicklung? Welche Perspektiven siehst du für den Westen und insbesondere für Deutschland? Lässt sich ein dritter Weltkrieg noch verhindern?
Well, let's look at the big question. Can a third world war be prevented? The answer, of course, is yes. It can be prevented. All it requires is rational actors to act rational. But NATO is not a rational actor. Germany today is not a rational actor. There's almost no nation in Europe today that's a rational actor. They've all been infected by the corrupt unilateral vision of America. America is the number one threat to the world today. American policy seeks to continue to breathe life into the decrepit rules-based international order that was brought into being at the end of the Second World War. Well, it ain't the end of the Second World War anymore. Cold War is over. We're into a new era, an era defined by multilateralism, an era defined by shifting geopolitical centers of gravity. The world doesn't rotate around America anymore. The concept of American exceptionalism is dead. America is not the exceptional power. It is a power. It is even a great power, but it's not the exceptional power. It's not the sole remaining power. There are competition out there. China is dominating America economically. Russia is dominating America militarily. And collectively, Russia, China, together with other nations like that Europe derisively calls the global South, or to cite the jungle. The jungle is coming together in an economic bloc that swamps Germany's potential. Germany's on the wrong side. Germany could, and in Europe could, do very well if they would just understand that following American unilateral hegemony is a death sentence. That if you want to succeed, you need to start focusing on becoming part of a multilateral world. It doesn't mean subordinating yourself to China. It means joining China together as part of a forum where everybody's voice gets heard, where you don't have a Chinese leader standing next to a German cuckold chancellor saying, I'm going to blow up your sole way of making your economy viable. I'm going to blow up your pipeline. And the chancellor does nothing because he's already the submissive mistress of the American master. China doesn't operate that way. Russia doesn't operate that way. Germany could relearn how to be a sovereign nation by joining the multipolarity, by joining the team, but instead of subordinating itself to the American hegemon. If NATO, what is the future for NATO? It's a dead organization. It's literally dead man walking. It has no viable mission. It has no viable way of sustaining itself. People need to understand that there's a world of difference between idiots in Brussels putting out papers, putting out PowerPoint presentations, making speeches, and then translating all of that into reality. Again, your super tank is one aspect of that. People can talk about a super tank. They can design a super tank. They can spend money on it. You're never going to get a super tank. Never. That's my prediction. It'll never happen. It'll go the way of the dinosaur. We live in a dangerous world because Francis Fukuyama, an American historian and political scientist, back when the Soviet Union collapsed, talked about the end of history. Basically said that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's the end of ideological conflict, and that American neoliberalism has emerged victorious. We are the dominant force in the world. That means that the world is just going to revolve around America forever, the end of history. What an absurd notion. Because with the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of problems. It was a messy, it should have been a messy divorce. That would have been nice. Because when you have a messy divorce, people actually fight it out up front, and they divide the property up front, and then they walk away, etc. But Gorbachev, Bush, and everybody tried to make it an easy divorce, a painless divorce. But in doing so, all the problems that existed were suppressed, and we see them rising today. The conflict in Ukraine is example number one. The issue of Ukraine should have been resolved right at the start. Crimea should have been stripped away. The Donbass should have been stripped away. The Russian people should have been given the right of referendum. Europe would have recognized Ukraine as a fake nation state, an artificial entity populated by corrupt people who trace their lineage back to Stepan Bandera. This all would have come out in the divorce, but they didn't have it. They just said, nope, here's Ukraine, a nice little baby. Let's put it out there. And now we're paying the price. The situation in Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia and Azerbaijan is the same thing. It should have been resolved then, but it wasn't. And now it's coming back to haunt. We see the collapse of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the First World created a lot of problems too. In Syria, in Iraq, the Vilayet of Aleppo, the Vilayet of Mosul were considered by the Turks of the Anatolian Peninsula to be part of Anatolia. But because Western nations came in, they redrew the maps, they created problems. And today you have Erdogan thinking that he can revive the Ottoman Empire. History keeps rearing its ugly head. It's not the end of history. History will always be here. And we're now in the process of redefining a new era of history, because the Western neoliberalism that Francis Fukuyama said had dominated is dying. It is no longer competitive. There's other institutions, other ways of doing business, of governance emerging that are equal to or better than that. So, this is a period of huge transformation and transition. And like anything, it's going to be tectonic in nature. We're going to have earthquakes. We're going to have problems. How we deal with these crises is going to determine whether or not there's a third world. And the best way to deal with these crises is to be realistic and understand that if you acknowledge that we are in a period of transformation, transition, you acknowledge that what was is in the past and what will be is in the future. You can't say what was is now and will be. You have to understand that you need to divorce from the past. So Germany and Europe have to start looking forward at what the world will be, not what the United States wants it to be. The United States is trapped in the past. We think that we can take what we had 10 years ago and make it relevant today and continue it tomorrow. We can't. We haven't acknowledged the transition. Europe needs to acknowledge the transition, and in doing so, perhaps breathe some common sense into America so that we don't go down fighting. Because if we go down fighting, we have nuclear weapons, and our nuclear weapons, if used, will be the end of the world. So that's my prognosis. We can stop World War III, but the way things are going right now, especially because of Germany, Europe refusing to divorce themselves from the American hegemon, we're probably not going to stop World War III.
Die Bundesregierung verschärft ihren Ton gegenüber Russland zusehends. Längst wird in Politik und Medien darüber debattiert, Deutschland wieder kriegstüchtig zu machen. Und das, obwohl die deutsche Bevölkerung vielerorts deutlich macht, dass sie keineswegs einen Krieg gegen Russland befürwortet. Welche Perspektiven siehst du für Deutschland? Was müsste getan werden, um das zerrüttete Verhältnis zwischen Deutschland und Russland wieder zu verbessern?
The question is, the answer lies with the German people. What do you want? Do you want war with Russia? You have a government that will give it to you. I mean, Chancellor Scholz and Pistorius and your foreign minister seem to be comfortable with the idea of a conflict with Russia. Any German official that talks about needing to be prepared for a war with Russia in the next 5 years is a threat not only to Germany, but humanity. What are the German people going to do about this? Germany could be a leader in Europe and say that that they will not participate in this kind of action. Germany could also start to look to the future on how they're going to repair their economy, the deindustrialization that's taking place. Another German automaker has shut its doors, 5,000 jobs lost because of the failing German economy. The German economy could be revived overnight by simply saying, we would like access to cheap Russian energy. That could save our economy. It could also repair relations between Germany and Russia. Germany could be the leader of repairing relations between Russia and Europe. But to do that, Germany is going to have to redefine itself as a nation. And that redefinition has to be include distancing itself from the United States and distancing itself from NATO and distancing itself from an aggressive European Union. understand that where Germany goes, the European Union will follow because Germany is the economic engine of the European Union for the moment. But if Germany's economy continues to diminish, then Germany loses that capacity to lead. So the Germans right now are on a path of either annihilation in a war against Russia or irrelevancy, a failing nation with a failed economy. I think the future is in the hands of the German people. It can be salvaged. You don't have to go to war with Russia. You don't have to be a prisoner of a irresponsibly aggressive NATO. You can make peace with Russia. You can improve your economy. You can ensure that Europe thrives economically and politically and socially in the decades to come. But to do that, you have to free yourself of the political and economic elite that currently have taken you hostage. And I'm talking about German politicians and German industrialists. The last thing I'll leave is if you don't want to go the way of the Morgenthau plan, because I can tell you right now that if Russia does go to war against you and the world doesn't end, you will be destroyed. And then Russia will, you won't exist as a nation. And that's it.
Medial wird darüber debattiert, ob Deutschland eigene Atomwaffen besitzen sollte. Eingebettet in die Diskussion, Deutschland kriegstüchtig zu machen, nannte Bundeskanzler Olaf Scholz den russischen Präsidenten Wladimir Putin Mitte Februar einen Lügner. Putin hatte gesagt, Russland stelle keine Gefahr für die NATO dar. Für Scholz wie für die ganze NATO steht fest, der Westen muss aufrüsten, um der russischen Gefahr zu begegnen. Wer lügt hier und wer erzählt die Wahrheit? Wird die NATO durch Russland bedroht? Braucht Deutschland Atomwaffen zu seinem eigenen Schutz?
Well, it's interesting that, NATO talks about Russian imperialism. That implies an expansionist Russia, but I don't think it was an expansive Russia that worked its way up to NATO's borders. It was an expanding NATO that worked its way to Russia's borders. And if you listen to Vladimir Putin, I mean, with all due respect, Olaf Scholz, you're an idiot, truly an idiot. But the German people know that because he's proven it with everything he says and does. A failed leader of a failed country, of a failed people. But let's have Olaf Scholz sit down for hey, Olaf, here's my deal. I'll interview you for 2 hours. Me and you, pal. Sort of be the equivalent of Carlson Putin, but it'll be Ritter Scholz. Come on, man, you can do it. You're confident, aren't you? I mean, you came to, you're saying these bold statements. Give me 2 hours with you, and I'll have you pooping yourself because you're a liar. You don't know what you stand for. You're just a little baby. You'll need a diaper change midway through. That's what the reality is. Olaf Scholz stands for nothing. He's just making stuff up. There was a time when Germany knew how to stand on its own 2 feet. Back in the 1980s, the German people participated in protests against the arrival of intermediate nuclear forces, American nuclear weapons on German soil. They understood what the consequences were. Back in the day, when NATO was a real military alliance, the Germans had the guts to look at the Americans in the eye and say, we will not trade space for time and allow you to use tactical nuclear weapons against the advancing Soviet army because those weapons will go off on German soil. And we don't want German soil to be contaminated for thousands of years. Back then, Germans actually loved their country. Loved it so much that they didn't want nuclear weapons to be used, that they were willing to fight and die on the border as opposed to giving up land and letting nuclear weapons be used. Where are those Germans today? Where's that spirit today? Why is Germany rushing to commit suicide? Because you do understand that if you possess nuclear weapons will be used against you automatically. And you don't even have to be a party to the conflict. Just being a member of NATO does it. So let's hypothetically think that Lithuania, Estonia, or Latvia, one of these insane Baltic countries, decides to oppress their Russian population. Germany has no say in that. It's not part of Germany. Germany could be opposed to it. It doesn't matter. They're NATO members. So let's say Estonia starts putting Russians in concentration camps. Let's say that Lithuania says, we're not going to give Russia the access to Kaliningrad that it needs. We're going to blockade Russia. And Russia takes military action to resolve what is obviously an act of war against Russia. Now, the Baltic states are going to scream, Article 5, collective defense. And Germany's going to say, my God, we have to, because Article 5 is sacred. It's a sacred obligation. That's not Germany's words. That's Joe Biden's word, but Germany doesn't matter because you do whatever the American president tells you to do. But now you have nuclear weapons. But you only have them for deterrence, right? We're just deterring the Russians not to use. You're going to be nuked instantly. Bam, 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 bam. The entire German nation will be a radioactive cloud. It's automatic, people. There's no debating it. It will happen because you're stupid. You're idiots. You forgot to be in love with your own country. There was a time when Germany said no to nuclear weapons because they understood the consequences of it again. It's a manufactured threat to Russia. Again, one of the things that I would challenge Olaf Scholz in the debate that will never happen, in the interview that will never happen, is define the Russian threat in a way, quantify it so that you can convince me, a military expert, how Russia gets from where they are today to Berlin. Talk about the logistics. Talk about a number of men that are necessary. Talk about how large the Russian army has to be, because understanding the Russian army is sort of maxed out right now fighting in Ukraine, but you want them to advance through Poland, secure flanks in the Baltics, secure flanks in Central Europe, and move on to Berlin. How many million Russian soldiers will be needed for that? And has Russian military been built up to that fashion? The answer is no. The Russian military is not an offensive military capable of sustained large-scale combat in Europe. They are a military that can counterattack. For instance, as Vladimir Putin said, if Russia is attacked by Poland, then Russia will destroy that Polish army and then counterattack and eliminate Poland as a nation state. If Germany wants to be a part of that, then Russia will do so too. But Russia will have to mobilize around 5 million men. But they don't have 5 million men right now. So they don't pose a threat to Germany. So why are you talking about it? Oh, yeah, that's right, because your American masters told you to say it. That's the reality. No, Russia doesn't pose a threat to Germany. Germany shouldn't have nuclear weapons. It's literally committing suicide because nuclear weapons make you an automatic nuclear target. Even if you don't want to be part of what's going on, you're part of the club now. And so it's dialed in automatically. And so you will be terminated instantly. Is that the future you want? I don't think so, but, you do you.
Auch gegenüber China hat die Bundesregierung ihren Tonfall verschärft. In ihrer China-Strategie nennt sie die Volksrepublik einen systemischen Rivalen und propagiert ein De-Risking, also faktisch eine Abkopplung von der chinesischen Wirtschaft. Im September 2023 nannte Bundesaußenministerin Annalena Baerbock den chinesischen Präsidenten Xi Jinping einen Diktator. Welche Strategie verfolgt die von Kanzler Scholz geführte Bundesregierung gegenüber China? Dient es wirklich den deutschen Interessen, sich ausschließlich transatlantisch auszurichten?
Well, it appears that the government of Olaf Scholz is I think he's decided that Germany is going to commit suicide and that he's actively promoting the death of Germany. We can say this in a number of ways. One, if according to your foreign minister, America is your best friend, why did we blow up the Nord Stream pipeline? And Germany knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. They know. They knew ahead of time. You could see it on Olaf Scholz's face when he stood there in the White House when President Biden said, I'm going to blow it up if Russia goes into Ukraine. And then they blew it up and Germany did nothing. So if that's your friend, if that's how you define friendship, I don't want to be too crude, but it sounds a lot like sadomasochism to me. It's not friendship. It's some sort of a submissive role playing by the German chancellor. Russia. What kind of friend is Russia? I don't know. Russia was the friend that helped all of Germany thrive economically. It was Russia. It was cheap Russian energy that helped Germany become the economic power that it is. Imagine if Germany had to pay market price for its energy over the course of 3-4 decades. The hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of marks and euros that would have been spent, but have instead been invested into Germany. What Germany was, because Germany isn't that anymore. Germany today is a failing deindustrialized state. I think the German government just told the German people that they won't be able to subsidize their energy prices this one. God forbid Germany has a harsh one. The only bright glimmering hope in the German economy is the relationship it has with China. It was interesting when the Chinese premier came to Germany. There was a lot of pressure on Germany to, it's called de-risking. The United States doesn't allow Germany to call it what it is, decoupling. The United States wants Germany to decouple from China. But instead, to make it sound more dramatic, they call it de-risking. What it means is decoupling. They want the German companies to stop investing in China, stop having a economic relationship with China. But every single one, without exception, every German company that's invested in China told the German authorities, we are losing money across the board. Everything we do is losing money because of the high energy price. Only place we make money is in China. And you want us to de-risk, to pull back from the only thing that keeps us afloat. If we de-risk in China, we disappear as a company. This is why a lot of German companies are starting to look offshore to leave Germany. This is the deindustrialization of Germany. So China is right now Germany's only economic hope for the immediate future. In the long-term future, the only hope Germany has for recovery is Russia, and somehow convincing Russia to once again allow cheap energy to flow to Germany so that the Germans can return to some sort of normalcy when it comes to their energy policy. The worst friend in the world to Germany is the United States. We attacked you. We attacked you. Yes, we told your cuckold chancellor that we were going to attack you, and he didn't do anything. He stood there and accepted. He won't allow an investigation to take place. But we attacked you. Do friends attack you? Germany, in America, there's this TV show called Seinfeld. And there was an episode where basically the whole world flipped upside down, where friends became enemies, up became down, everything was backwards. And Germany's going through a long and tragic episode of Seinfeld, where it's opposites. Your friends are your enemies are your friends. Germany needs to start standing up on its own. The Germans need to start standing up on their own. I know, I hear how difficult it is. I hear many Germans tell me that they are an occupied state, that they are totally beholden to the United States. Let me give you a professional tip, Germany, from an American. We were once an occupied state. Great Britain occupied us. We had to pay taxes to the British Crown without any representation. We held a revolution. We liberated ourselves. That's why we're free people. If you want to stop looking in the mirror and bemoaning the fact that you are an occupied state beholden to the United States, hold a revolution. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm just talking about going to the streets and telling America, get the hell out of my country. What more harm can America do to you? They've already destroyed your economy. They don't care about you. They dragged you into a conflict with Russia. They've dragged you into supporting a Nazi regime in Ukraine. How much more can Germany be debased? You've allowed America to do everything possible to turn you into the wreckage of a nation that you are. Friends, we're not your friends. We're your worst nightmare. We're your enemy from hell. Your friends, point to Moscow. They actually care about you. Point to China. They're willing to do business with you, but not America. We just want to dominate you. That's okay. If you want to wear tight black leather and run around with a rubber ball in your mouth, be my guest. We'll be more than happy to appease you. But if you want to be free men and free women, stand up and kick us the hell out of your country.
Während die Bundesregierung in den Beziehungen zu Russland und China viel Porzellan zerschlagen hat, reichen diese Länder Deutschland noch immer die Hand. So sprach der russische Präsident Wladimir Putin im März von goldenen Zeiten, die immer dann eintraten, wenn Deutschland und Russland gemeinsam und vereint gehandelt hätten. Man kann an zahlreiche historische Beispiele denken, wie etwa die napoleonischen Kriege, die deutsch-russische Zusammenarbeit im 20. Jahrhundert, etwa mit der DDR im Rahmen des Rates für gegenseitige Wirtschaftshilfe und dem Warschauer Pakt, aber auch an die guten deutsch-russischen Wirtschaftsbeziehungen unter Bundeskanzler Gerhard Schröder. Welche Perspektiven siehst du, Scott, für die deutsch-russischen Beziehungen, aber auch für die zukünftige deutsche Geopolitik in Richtung Frieden, Völkerverständigung und Multipolarität?
Well, the first thing is I'd be careful about going too far back in history, especially when there was an East Germany and a West Germany. Germany was occupied at that time. It was a byproduct of an unfinished process at the end of the Second World War that never brought about a peace treaty. So we need to talk about Germany in the post-unification stage. And there we do see that Germany did have constructive relations with Russia. But Germany, allowed itself to be subsumed into NATO, to be controlled by the United States, and to become part of this march to the east. The Germany got addicted to whatever drug NATO is, and the European Union. They got addicted into being the economic engine of the European Union, and the European Union is an extension of the political ambitions of the military alliance that is NATO, which is nothing other than an extension of American foreign and national security objectives. Germany became a tool of the United States. That's what happened. But there is potential because Germany is a nation of tremendous industrial capacity. And if they focus this capacity for good, you became the economic engine of Europe. Germany should be a leader of Europe, but you can't be a leader when you're a follower. Do you understand what I'm saying, Germany? As long as you're a follower of the United States, you can't be a leader of anything because you're little more than a proxy acting on behalf of the United States. But Germany has this tremendous industrial capacity. And with that industrial capacity comes the ability for economic power. And economic power is not necessarily a bad thing if it's done for the right reason. To bring stability to Europe is a good use of German economic power. But stability done through economic interaction, not military occupation. Germany is the last nation in the world that should be producing tanks, armored fighting vehicles, or jet fighters. There's no reason for Germany to produce any of that. Are you defending yourself from America? If you are, how come you haven't bombed the American bases on your soil yet? Because you're not. Is Russia a threat worthy of this multi-billion dollar, hundreds of billion dollars investment? No, Russia doesn't pose any threats to you. And yet that anytime Germany gets a viable industrial base, it militarizes. It doesn't need to be the arsenal of anybody. It should be the nation that produces the goods that make society better on a global basis. But if Germany can't make that happen and it chooses to militarize its industry, then it probably doesn't deserve to have that industrial base, because history shows what happens when you give Germans weapons. They then put on uniforms and then they start marching east and west and south, and they think they have to take over the world. So if Germany has this very strong potential, and it should use it for good, not to industrialize, militarize.
Solange Deutschland in der NATO und der EU fest eingebunden ist, lässt sich kaum eine souveräne und auf Verständigung mit Russland und China orientierte Politik realisieren. Welche Schlussfolgerungen muss Deutschland daraus ziehen hinsichtlich der NATO? Was müsste Deutschland tun, wenn es die NATO verlassen wollte?
First of all, politically, it'll be very difficult for Germany to leave NATO because Germany has been an important part of NATO conceptually and practically from the very beginning. If you remember, Lord Hastings, the first civilian or the first Secretary General of NATO, when asked, what is the mission of NATO, he said it's to keep the Americans in, keep the Germans down, and keep the Russians out. So Germany is always factored in. Now Germany hasn't been kept down. We've reunified Germany, which sort of, and Russians are out, and United States, under Donald Trump may not want in. So we have a situation where, NATO is going through an identity crisis, but the Germans also have, I think, a hangover from the occupation days when they were an occupied, nation torn in two, east and west. Even though they're unified today, it wasn't so long ago that it was a divided nation. And the psychology of the occupied continues because of the continued presence of American troops on German soil. So it would be very difficult for Germany, both from a national psychological perspective and from a historical perspective, to walk away from NATO. But at some point in time, Germany has to weigh in its own best interests. Again, I remind the German people that the United States attacked you when we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. We attacked critical infrastructure, and we have contributed to the collection of events that have, in their totality, devastated your economy. We've declared economic warfare against you. We seek to use you to, sustain the unsustainable fight that's going on in Ukraine. We don't seem to care about your economic future. We don't care about anything other than your ability to immediately fulfill our demands and our expectations. Is this the future that Germany wants? And I think the answer is probably no. It's definitely not the future that Germany deserves. But how would Germany go about divorcing itself? I think the first thing that Germany would need to do is take control of the European Union and confront the European Union with literally the notion of my way or the highway, meaning that German economic policy will be insisted upon. And the alternative, if France and Italy and others opt not to do this, is that Germany withdraws from the single currency and goes back to the mark, which will become a very strong currency that it'll lead to the collapse of the euro. And at that point in time, Germany now has created economic chaos that, again, I think would allow the German people to conceive of a withdrawal from NATO. This can be done together with a diplomatic outreach to Russia, getting Russia to put in, to open up what's left of the Nord Stream pipeline, to repair the existing, the remnants of the pipeline, to get cheap energy flowing in, and then to tie Germany into this large market. I mean, German automobile manufacturers only are surviving today because of their the business they're doing in China. And China is an important part of the BRICS forum. Russia is a part of that too. I think if Russia could lure Germany away from the G7, from the insanity of American-driven politics and policies, that Germany could find a home in BRICS. But that's what it would take. Germany's not just going to jump off the NATO European Union bandwagon. There has to be something to jump onto. And so far, Germany hasn't made any, discernible, viable efforts in that direction. So in the near term, I don't think you're going to see Germany making a move to leave NATO. But again, at the end of the day, it's the economy that matters most. That's the thing that most elections, revolve around, and German politicians know this reality. And I think over time, you're going to see pressure being put on the German politicians to walk away from American-driven policies that are only bringing harm to Germany economically and in terms of the quality of life of its people, and maybe to once again look to Russia for their salvation.
Du bist bekannt für deine Analysen und deine scharfe Kritik, auch an der deutschen Politik. Doch welche Perspektive siehst du, damit Deutschland sich aus der US-amerikanischen Umklammerung befreien kann? Welche Ratschläge kannst und willst du der deutschen Bevölkerung geben?
Well, the first thing is, if you continue to do nothing, if you continue to say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Then you're going to be destroyed, because Olaf Scholz doesn't care about you. Remember, this time last year, Porsche was making automobiles. They're not going to be making it because you didn't do a damn thing. You sat by and did nothing while your economy is being destroyed. All those people that had the jobs and are saying, well, I don't want to do anything because I don't want to lose my job. You lost your job, and you're all going to lose your jobs because Olaf Scholz doesn't care about you. You've bought into this dream that's no longer valid. The German people need to do a couple things. One, recognize that NATO is a suicide pill. Olaf Scholz has signed this agreement that guarantees your death if you ever fight Russia, because you cannot beat Russia. It's over. Done. You can never beat Russia. Ever. You will never beat Russia. There are tanks in Berlin on pedestals, Russian tanks, that prove you will never beat Russia. If you want to continue down this path, you'll just upgrade those tanks from T-34-85s to T-90s, because Russia will crush you again if that's the path you want to take. Do you really want to go to war? We're not going to have German troops involved in this war. Well, what war, Olaf? What war? And the German people need to ask that question. What war? Because he just committed you to a war with Russia that you will lose. What can we do? You can die, and you will die. So now that I have told you that your fate is to die, accept your death. And now you can move forward with confidence and say, now what do we need to do to stop this? Because you now know that if you don't stop this, you're going to die. It's inevitable. Your death is a preordained outcome. So now that you know you're going to die and you've been free of that, you can clear your clouded brain and realize that Olaf Scholz is the problem. The German government is the problem. And since they are an extension of NATO and American policy, the problem is NATO and American policy. So what can you do about that? Revolution. Now, I'm not talking about violence, not cocaine violence. There's nonviolent revolution. You can overthrow this government, but you need to know where you want to go because you're scared. What are we going to do? How are we going to live? Oh my, oh my. Well, let's go back to basics. You need Russian energy. You need Russian energy. You need Russian gas. You need Russian oil. You need Russian coal. There's your salvation right there. Russia is your salvation. But it's not just Russia. Go talk to the executives. Remember, this last spring, I think fall actually, Germany sent delegations over to China. And because Germany was going to de-risk. Remember that? That's the word. We're going to de-risk. Well, what does de-risk mean? It means sanctioning China. But now let's take the Volkswagen. They were told to de-risk, which means you have to unplug from China. But the Volkswagen executives turned around to the German government and said, you do know that we don't make any money in Germany. We don't make any money in Europe because of you. Everything we do here is in the negative. We have to shut things down. The only reason why we're able to continue to function as a company is because of China and our operations in China. That's where we make money. And now the German government's saying you have to unplug from that, commit suicide. What does that tell you, German people? Stay in China. Work with the Chinese. They have a thing called the Belts and Roads Initiative. Get the Chinese to help you. Well, we can't do that. Why not? Oh, historically, we've been linked to America. America blew up your damn Nord Stream pipeline. We don't care about you. America gave you Olaf Scholz, who wants to commit you to a war that will result in your death. You're already dead. Stop being afraid. If you want to live, divorce yourself from that which is killing you. It's simple. Russian energy, Chinese economics, pivot to the East. There you are. Let me give you 5 letters that will be your salvation. BRICS. Germany needs to become a member of BRICS. Germany needs to get out of the European Union because it is a sinking ship. It has hit the iceberg and it's going down. And it doesn't matter how beautiful the music is played by the band on the ship. It's going to sink and everybody on that ship's going to die. The EU is finished, done. NATO is a poison pill. BRICS can be your salvation. Your economy needs large quantities of cheap energy. Russia can provide that. You're dead. It's okay. Don't worry about it. You're already dead. So how can it hurt you to say, we don't want to be a member of NATO anymore? How can it hurt you to say, we don't want to be tied to the European Union anymore? You say, we have no alternatives, but you do. You don't have to be a member of a military alliance. You don't have to be a member of a military alliance. There's a thing called neutrality. And your economic future doesn't lie with the West that's trying to kill you, but to the East that's willing to work with you. There, Germany, I just gave you the roadmap. Don't be afraid. You're already dead. It doesn't matter.
Auf deutschem Boden befinden sich nach wie vor Tausende von US-Soldaten, die im Falle eines NATO-Austritts ausgewiesen werden müssten. Zudem sind viele deutsche Monopolunternehmen eng verbunden mit dem US-Kapital und werden zum Teil sogar transatlantisch gesteuert. Würde ein Bruch mit der NATO nicht unvermeidlich mit einem radikalen Bruch mit den USA zusammenfallen? Welche konkreten Schritte wären notwendig, national wie international, damit Deutschland die NATO verlassen könnte?
Well, it's actually very simple. Take control of your government. Step one. Put people in power that put Germany first. Step two. Step three, withdraw from NATO. It's easy, guys. Withdraw from NATO. Say, I quit. Step four, send letters to the United States terminating the status of forces agreement and saying that the troops are no longer welcome on German soil and they should leave. That there will be, you no longer authorize American troops to carry out military exercises. You deny American aircraft any overflight that isn't directly related to the withdrawal of American forces. There will be you withdraw Germany from NATO. You have every German officer assigned to a NATO function come home. You stop funding NATO. You simply stop sending money to NATO. You don't participate in NATO. That's how you do it. You call up Russia and say, turn on the gas line, the remaining Nord Stream gas line, turn it on. You go to China, Russia, and you say, we're applying for BRICS membership. And you tell Russia that you're interested in resuming the full scope and scale of economic interaction. You tell the same thing to China. Rather than de-risking German companies in China, you expand German companies in China. It's really very easy. It's like the nose on your face. The path is there. The question is, do you have the courage to do it? Do you have the courage to tell America we don't want to be a part of you anymore? To tell NATO that you're a poison pill? Now, if the European Union wants to make a stink, then you withdraw from the European Union. But I don't think they want to make a stink, because if you withdraw from the European Union is over. That's the kind of leverage you have, Germany. You see what's happening in the United States, where we have the Republicans are in control of the House of Representatives, and they're saying no to everybody. And everybody's angry at them, but they can't do anything about it. Yes, if you withdrew from NATO, if you kicked the United States out, people would be mad at you, but what can they do about it? Because you hold them in the palm of your hand. You're not Greece. You're not Hungary. You're not some pathetic little minor European country. You're Germany. Without you, there is no European Union. Without you, there is no euro. Germany could transition to the mark and survive. Europe would dissolve, because without the euro, their economy ceases to function. Maybe France can resurrect a weak franc. Maybe Italy can breathe life into the lira. But all the rest of Europe goes away, collapses, because they bought into the euro. So Germany has a lot more power than they think, but Germany needs to grow up, needs to behave as an adult. So there's the answer. The question is, what are you going to do about it?